In a massive operation led by President Ibrahim Traoré, 47 trucks full of weapons and military ammunition were seized. The amount and type of weapons captured made everyone's question even bigger. Who were these weapons going to, and who is behind this? The incident began 3 days ago, at midnight in the Kanchari region, near Burkina Faso's border with Togo. Border guards noticed abnormal activity during routine patrol. A long convoy was moving along the borderline. That is usually quiet at these hours. The size of the convoy and its midnight movement raised suspicion. Border Commander Captain Traoré immediately reported the situation to higher authorities. Intelligence information received claimed the convoy was carrying humanitarian aid. But something was strange. Why would humanitarian aid be transported at midnight? Moreover, the convoy was using deserted back roads, not the normal route. When Traoré received this information, his instincts told him this was not an ordinary event. He immediately called Special Forces Commander General Ibrahim Zerbo. General, stop the convoy, but be careful. This might not be simple smuggling. He instructed Special Forces moved into action silently. They set up an ambush on the road where the convoy would pass. Helicopters took off. Drones began tracking the convoy. The massive convoy of 47 trucks was moving forward unaware of anything. The operation began around 4 in the morning. Special Forces blocked the road. The convoy suddenly stopped. Drivers tried to flee in panic, but the circle was tightening. After a short chase, all drivers were captured. When the first truck was opened, the sight that emerged shocked everyone. Modern automatic weapons were coming out of humanitarian aid. SACs, AK-47s, M16s, hand grenades, rocket launchers, and much more. Each truck was like an arsenal. Captain Kaburi immediately called Traoré. Mr. President, you won't believe it, sir, but there are enough weapons here to meet the needs of an army. This is not normal smuggling. Someone is preparing to start a war in Burkina Faso, Traoré said in a calm but determined voice. Collect everything. Not even a single bullet should be lost, and make the drivers talk. We need to find out who is behind this. One of the captured drivers, Jean-Baptiste Compere, was the first to speak. He began to tell, trembling, they told us these were agricultural machinery parts. We were going to take them to a warehouse in Togo. From there they would be loaded onto a ship. As the interrogation deepened, the scale of the matter emerged. Most drivers didn't know what they were carrying, but those who organized it were every professional. Each truck had a different route. They had left at different times. They had met at the border and formed a convoy. On the second day, more striking findings were obtained in the detailed search serial. Numbers on the weapons had been attempted to be erased, but Burkina Faso intelligence revealed some numbers with modern techniques. These weapons came from very interesting places. Some weapons were from the civil war in Libya. Some had been used in Yemen. Some were newly manufactured and had never been used. The total value of the weapons exceeded $100 million. Who had paid this much money? Traoré immediately convened the National Security Council. The inventory of seized weapons was presented at the meeting. $15,000. AK-47 rifles 5,000, M16 rifles, 3 million bullets, 50,000 hand grenades, 1,500 rocket launchers, 200 anti-aircraft missiles, 20 tons of explosives. Defense Minister General Sadou Traoré was in shock. You could invade a small country with these weapons. These were definitely prepared for a coup or civil war. Who needs this many weapons? Interior Minister Oseni Kari was concerned. Mr. President, if these weapons had been distributed, our country would have turned into a bloodbath. Terror groups could have fought for years with these, or opposition groups could have staged a coup. Traoré stood up. Friends, this is not a coincidence. Someone wants to destabilize our country, just like in Libya, Syria, Yemen. But we are awake. We have disrupted their game. Intelligence Chief Commandant Odrago took the floor. Mr. President, one of the captured drivers has started talking. The final destination of the weapons was secret warehouses in Ouagadougou. They would be distributed there. Upon this information, Traoré made a tough decision. Immediately start a large-scale operation in Ouagadougou. Search all suspicious warehouses. Find out who is waiting for these weapons, and most importantly, find the financiers. The next day, dawn operations began in the capital Ouagadougou. Simultaneous raids were conducted on 23 different addresses. More weapons were found in 17 warehouses. The size of the weapon stocks was mind-boggling. Among those arrested were every familiar names: former ministers, retired generals, wealthy businessmen, and even some foreign diplomats there. Common feature was their opposition to the Traoré administration. On the fourth day of the operation, the biggest shock occurred. One of the arrested businessmen, François Bong, became an informant. His statement had a bomb effect. Bong Kong told Trembling, "This plan was made months ago. Foreign powers promised us support, we would overthrow Traoré. A pro-Western government would be established in its place. The weapons were brought for this." Traoré asked which foreign powers. Bong Kong hesitated. But finally, spoke. Meetings were held in Accra. There were participants from Abidjan. 2 instructions came from Paris. Approval was obtained from Washington. The room was shrouded in silence. Everyone was in shock. Traoré said, "Continue." Bongo continued to tell the plan was like this. First, terrorist attacks would be organized, the people would panic. Then the opposition would rise up, collaborators within the army would stage a coup. Even more terrible details emerged. The code name of the plan was determined as Operation Restore Democracy. The budget was 200 million. The weapons were just the first part of this. Among the names given by Bonongwe, shocking ones. Some Western embassy officials, representatives of multinational companies, even some international organization workers were on the list. In light of this information, Traoré decided to hold a historic press conference. The world had to learn about this conspiracy. It had to be seen. How Africa was being destabilized. The press conference was broadcast live on national television. Some of the seized weapons were displayed behind Traoré. The image was very impressive. The piles of weapons frightened people. Traoré began his speech. "Dear Burkinabe brothers and world public, 3 days ago we prevented the biggest arms smuggling in our history. But this was not just arms smuggling. This was part of a conspiracy planned against our country." He showed the documents in his hand. Here is the evidence. 47 trucks of weapons. Total value, $100 million. The target is to destabilize Burkina Faso, to turn our people against each other, and to establish a puppet government. Traoré continued with a harsh voice. "Where did these weapons come from? I cannot yet disclose all the details, but I can say, this imperialist powers still want to control Africa, but they will not succeed because we are awake." Journalists in the hall began asking questions excitedly. CNN correspondent asked, "Which countries are behind these weapons?" Traoré said, "The investigation continues, but some of the weapons were manufactured in NATO countries." BBC correspondent asked, "So who are the leaders of this conspiracy?" Traoré said, 7 people have been arrested. Among them are former ministers and generals. Informants are talking. Soon, all the truth will come out. Al Jazeera correspondent asked, "How will this event affect regional security?" Traoré answered decisively, "This is an attack not only on Burkina Faso but on all of Africa. Similar conspiracies are being carried out in Mali, Niger, Guinea. We must now act together." A journalist from Russian press asked, "Will you increase your security measures?" Traoré said, "Definitely. Our army is on alert. Our borders are under tight control, and most importantly, our people are with us." The most striking moment of the press conference was the broadcast of one of the detainees' statements. François Bong appeared on the screen. Its confessions horrified everyone. Bong Kongo was speaking while crying. "They deceived us. They said, 'You will bring democracy.' Actually, we would have divided our country. Traoré is right. We became traitors. I apologize to my people." When the video ended, the hall was silent. Traoré continued, "Here is the real face. These people were selling their country for money, but they failed and they will fail." While the press conference continued, people had started gathering. Outside, thousands of people had taken to the streets to support Traoré. Long life. Traoré down with imperialism. Slogans were being chanted. Traoré addressed the people. "Dear people, thanks to your support, we prevented this conspiracy. Thanks to your vigilance, our country is safe. As long as we are together, no one can defeat us." Young people held a support demonstration by lighting torches. Women sang the national anthem. The elderly prayed, God protect Traoré, protect our country. Meanwhile, support messages began coming from all over. Africa Mali leader Amy Goita said, "Brother Traoré is the owner of Africa. We're also tightly controlling our borders." Leader Chiani said, "This conspiracy is against all of us. We must now share intelligence. Africa must ensure its own security." Guinea leader Dumboya said, "There is no place for arms barons in Africa. Traoré's courage should be an example to all of us." Saga leader Bassirou Diomaye sent a message, "As the African Union, we must tighten the arms embargo our continent is not." To weapons depot, even Chad leader Mohamed DB gave support. "We must act together in the fight against terrorism. These weapons could have fallen into the hands of terrorists from Uganda." Museveni said, "My young brother TR did a great job. Africa can now ensure its own security." From South Africa, Ramaphosa said this event should be a lesson for all of Africa. Arms smugglers and their supporters must be punished. On the fifth day of the operation, new developments. Secured documents from seized computers revealed the extent of the conspiracy. Not only Burkina Faso, but the entire Sahel region was targeted. There were striking detail. Threatened Burkina Faso with economic sanctions, but Traoré did not back down. "History will judge those who threaten us." He said Russia and China supported Burkina Faso. Putin's spokesman said, "Every country has the right to ensure its security. Traoré is fighting." Her rightful struggle, China went even further. "We will donate security equipment to Burkina Faso. We stand with them in the fight against terrorism." Turkey also gave support. "Africa's security is our security too. Arms smuggling is a crime against humanity." Message was sent. Iran came out strong. "Imperialist powers should leave Africa alone. Democracy cannot be brought with weapons." Venezuelan leader Maduro said, "Brother Traoré is the new Bolivar, the hero leader of anti-imperialists." On the seventh day, Traoré appeared before the people. Thousands had gathered his speech wash. "Historic, dear people, a week ago, we prevented a major conspiracy against our country. We seized 47 trucks of weapons, but more importantly, we disrupted the game. We caught those who wanted to turn us against each other." The people applauded. Enthusiastically, Traoré continued, "This victory is not only ours, but all of Africa's victory. Now no one can play games with weapons in Africa. Now no one can try to make us." Pulpits, young people kept tempo, chanting Traoré. Women shouted victory cries, the elderly shed tears. Traoré finished his words like this: "We will melt these weapons and build schools, build hospitals. We will transform death tools into life tools." This is the real victory. When the speech ended, the square was roaring. Everyone was hugging, kissing, celebrating. Burkina Faso had been saved from a great disaster. On the 8th day of the operation, the fate of the weapons became clear. As Traoré said, some would be melted and sold as metal. The income would be spent on education. Some would be given to the army. They would be used for the modernization of the Burkina Faso army. The rest would be destroyed. This event was not just a weapons operation. Actually, this was a symbol of Africa's awakening. Now Africa would determine its own destiny. Traoré not only seized weapons with this operation, he also saved Africa's honor. The young leader once again challenged imperialism and won as the echoes of the event continued. A new era was beginning in Africa. Now no power could threaten Africa with weapons because Africa had leaders like Traoré, and thus leaders were walking with their people against imperialism towards freedom from darkness to light. On the 10th day of the operation, Traoré made another surprise move. He organized a major event in Independence Square to display some of the seized weapons. Tens of thousands of citizens saw the piles of weapons with their own eyes. People were horrified. How could so many weapons have been smuggled into the country? An old man said, crying, "They were going to kill our grandchildren with these." A young woman shouted, "If it weren't for Traoré, civil war would have broken out by now." Traoré addressed the people, "This is what I wanted to show you. This was the future our enemies had prepared for us, but we were vigilant, we were united, and we won." He made another important announcement in his speech. "Dear people, with the money we will get from selling these weapons, we will build 100 schools, we will open 50 health centers, we will construct 1,000 kilometers of irrigation, canal, death tools will turn into life projects. The people applauded enthusiastically. At this time, weapons began to be symbolically melted in a giant cauldron brought to the stage. The mold made from the first melted weapon would be a school bell. Every morning when our children hear this bell, they will hear the voice of peace, said Traoré. International observers watched this scene with amazement. The United Nations representative said, "This is the first in African history. They are transforming weapons into peace symbols." The African Union Special Representative made an emotional speech. Traoré didn't just seize weapons, he changed Africa's destiny. Now the entire continent will follow his example. Meanwhile, the court process continued. The defendants' confessions were revealing more terrible details. Every day it was understood that the conspiracy was not limited to Burkina Faso, but was a huge plan covering all of West Africa. The route of the seized weapons was fully determined. They had left Eastern Europe and descended to the Sahel through Libya. There were intermediaries in every country, bribes had been paid at every stage, a complete organized crime network. Traoré shared this information with Interpol. International arrest warrants were issued. Assets of arms, barons were frozen. The crime network was being dismantled. The 15th day was declared a celebration day. It would be commemorated every year as National Awakening and Victory Day. Children in schools would learn about this event. Future generations would be vigilant. Traoré said in his final speech, "This victory showed that Africa can now stand on its own feet. We can ensure our own security. We can determine our own destiny. And most importantly, when we are united, no one can defeat us, neither with weapons, nor with money, nor with lies. Africa's time has come." And this time began with Traoré. Burkina Faso had become an example. Other African countries were also awakening arms barons, and their supporters could no longer shelter in Africa. As Traoré said, Africa would no longer be a weapons depot, but a depot of hope, a depot of peace, freedom, and brotherhood. And this depot would be open to all humanity, not with weapons, but with love, not with bombs, but with knowledge, not with bullets, but with brotherhood. This was the miracle Traoré created, not seizing 47 trucks, gave weapons, but winning 47 million hearts. And those hearts were now beating for freedom, beating for independence, beating for Africa.